Hello, welcome to RC Video Reviews. Today we're taking a look at the 70mm Viper V2 15th Anniversary Edition from FMS. Before I get into the content, I need to let you know this video is sponsored by Hobbyzone, who sent me the Viper V2 for review. I'll have links in the description if you'd like to pick up one of these models for yourself. That said, I'm under no obligation to provide anything but my honest feedback on this review, so with that out of the way, let's get started. Before I take the airplane out of the box, we'll cover the specs really quick. The wingspan on this model is 1100 millimeters or 43.3 inches. The overall length is 1025 millimeters or 40.4 inches. The flying weight is somewhere around 1795 grams all up. The motor size is a 3060 1900 kV in-runner, powered by a 80 amp ESC. It requires 8 9-gram metal digital servos and a 6-channel radio. The center of gravity is listed as 90 to 95 millimeters from the leading edge, and this is a 70mm 12-blade ducted fan. The recommended battery for this model is a 6S 3300 35C, and you get full house controls, aileron, elevator, throttle, rudder. This one also has flaps and retracts. The book says flying duration is about 4 minutes. The experience level is intermediate, and they say the assembly time takes around 10 to 30 minutes. Wing loading is 93.5 grams per dm squared, and the wing area is 19.2 dm squared. That wraps up the specs, and as usual, I like to leave the airplane in the box so you can see how well the manufacturer does in packing. FMS goes to great lengths to use styrofoam and tissue and all kinds of little protection elements in there to make sure your model is shipped without damage. So with that out of the way, let's get this airplane out of the box and take a closer look. We'll start out with the manual first. This is a typical FMS manual, black and white paper book, and languages supported are English, German, French, and Chinese. FMS manuals are pretty good showing how their models go together. So they've got nice engineering diagrams showing part placement and where the screws go. Very simple assembly on these, so you don't need too many pages, but just the right amount of detail is usually included. There's information about setting up your receiver and about how to set up your throws, your ESC, and of course your center of gravity will be in there as well. So typical FMS manual, just enough information, it's about right. Next we'll take a look at the fuselage, and I'll tell you something, I really like the color scheme on this one. The gray and blue with the highlights of yellow on the fins back here on the bottom, that's actually really cool. The cockpit looks like it fits just fine. There's a nice spring-loaded latch right here on the back, and when you press that, the cockpit lifts off the body. We'll get into that in just a minute. Here's a look inside the fuselage underneath the cockpit. There's a Velcro loop already in place on the battery tray and a strip of Velcro that you can apply to your battery, and there's also Velcro applied to the battery tray so you can stick your battery on there. And of course, all of the wires right there in the cockpit ready for you to assemble. FMS uses the EC style connectors. For me, I'll be cutting that off and replacing it with an XT90 because that's what I have on my batteries. But all the wiring you need is readily available right there in the cockpit. No stabilizer in this one, so if you want a stabilizer, you'll have to add that to yourself. I'm not sure there's much room in there for stabilizer. Maybe right here on the back, there might be room to fit a stabilizer there. We'll have to see. But no stabilizer installed. The ESC is tucked in right underneath this turtle deck, but don't worry, plenty of ventilation. If you flip the plane over, you can see the ESC right here and ventilation openings right where the airflow intake occurs. So good ventilation for the ESC. We should have plenty of air blowing over to remove the heat. On the front of the airplane, we've got our nose wheel, which is retracted nicely into the nose. No nose gear door on this one, it's just an open slot, but it's nice and tightly fitting against the fuselage, so you won't see any unnecessary drag and certainly no unnecessary weight. And then on the back, you've got fairly easy access to the EDF unit, 2 screws, and you'll be able to pop that out and gain access to the EDF. On the tail, there's a nice little molded jet exhaust with a little bit of a different color paint to at least make it stand out a little bit. I like that better than seeing just a flat cutoff on the back, so I think they did a nice job there. In terms of the paint, the graphics, and the quality of the molding, I don't really see any problems here. Everything looks like it's in good working order to me. And here's a look at the starboard side of the fuselage. I don't see any problems here either. Everything looks like it's in good working order. On the tail section, there are leads for the elevator and rudder servos, and then there are plastic pieces with brass inserts to capture the screws. I really do like it when they set these up so you can screw the empennage on and off. Number one, that makes it easy to repair. You're not dealing with glue to separate things if you have an accident. And number two, if you want to box it back up, it's a lot easier to do it when the tail section screws in. So nice work on that part. I like that quite a bit. Here's a look at the cockpit with our pilot. He's got his helmet, visor, a little microphone there in front of his mouth. And then if you look at the dashboard, there is a decal applique right there showing the avionics for the jet. And there's actually one there on the second row as well. You might be able to see that just a little bit better. So 2 rows of controls in case you need them. Next up is the main wing. This is a single piece design with all the wiring coming right out of the center. So that'll slide into the center of the fuselage and make for easy connections to get everything wired up. And there's that bright pop of yellow. I can tell you right now while you're flying this plane, that bright pop of yellow is really going to be cool and highly visible in the sky. 2 thumbs up for me on that one. I like that a lot. Here's a look at the bottom of the wing. The mains are retracted into the wing cavity. No landing gear doors on these and no skirts on the landing gear. It's just the leg by itself. I will point out that the hinges for the flaps and the ailerons are EPO hinges. So if you intend on keeping this plane for any period of time, it's generally a good idea to cut those free and use normal hinges. Use like a CA hinge or some kind of pin hinge. I'm a big fan of doing that on EPO planes when they use EPO hinges. And then here's a look at the port side. We've got our control horns already installed with ball links, and the servos are already installed as well. They've done a nice job using a gray tape to hide the servo wires. I approve of that. I'm glad to see they make some effort hiding the wires underneath. That looks very good. They also already glued the winglets on, so you don't have to do that either. They've taken care of that for you as well. Here's a look at the port side trailing edge. I like to show this just to give you an idea that the trailing edge is straight and we don't see any defects in the workmanship or the molding. So that looks very clean to me. And then here's the starboard side trailing edge, which also looks very straight. No issues there. Here's a vertical stabilizer with the plastic catches to screw it onto the airframe. The rudder servo lead is right there, and there's a hole right up front to screw the front edge of the vertical stabilizer on as well. And then here's the servo and the ball connector already installed. Also EPO hinges on this one. Don't forget to flex these before you attach your servos. You just kind of want to loosen that EPO hinge up just a little bit. I'd say the vertical stabilizer looks perfectly straight. I don't see any problems with the workmanship there. And again, pop of color. You've got this dark blue vertical stabilizer with some bright yellow lettering. Again, for orientation purposes, that will really help in the sky, I'm sure. Here's a look at the horizontal stabilizer with the Viper logo here on the port side. The control horns are screwed in already, and there is a top plate. I like that because I like to see the top plate and the horns sandwich the EPO, so that's very well done. 2 screws on each. 2 screws here, 2 screws here. Already installed, no work for you to do there. The trailing edge looks just fine. I don't see any warp or bending issues there. And then the leading edge also looks pretty good, no issues there. To attach the horizontal stabilizer to the airframe, there's a plastic capture for 2 screws that will go direct into the fuselage. And then up front, there are 2 more holes where the vertical stabilizer sits, and the screws for the vertical stabilizer will go through those 2 holes into the fuselage, into those brass captures. The last thing to show you is the hardware bag, and there is really nothing to it. There's just a couple control rods that have ball links already attached, and Z-bends, and the screws that you need to hold your wings and your horizontal and vertical stabilizers on. So really, from an assembly standpoint, you'll spend more time playing with your radio than you will putting this model together. Before I wrap this one up, I want to let you know Hobbyzone is running a special for Christmas 2023. Right now, they have a $20 off coupon on this model, so you can pick it up for $279. I'd like to say thanks to Hobbyzone for sending this Viper V2 out for review. I will get it put together and over to the field for a maiden just as soon as I can. By the looks of things, it looks like it should fly just fine. I'll be curious to see how the battery and motor perform, of course, but that's what maiden flights are all about. If you like this kind of content, make sure you smash that thumbs up button, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you know when new videos hit the channel. That's all I've got for today. Take it easy and go fly something.